Dominus Cinephile.
Welcome to my movie and TV series reviews, where I will provide honest opinions of the latest releases. If the movie or TV series is a hit or a miss, be sure to know I will inform you. But if the movie or series is trash, be also sure to know that I will trash the hell out of the movie. I am Dominus Cinephile.
And the movie on the review table today is the Nollywood film Suspicion. Suspicion is a 2024 Nollywood thriller co-written by Tosin Igho and Kolade and directed by Tosin Igho. The film boasts a stellar cast including Stan Nze, Uzor Arukwe, Omowumi Dada, Tina Emba, Uche Chika Elumelu, Orezi, Francis Sule, Boma Akpore, Kalu Ikeagwu, and the legendary Richard Mofe-Damijo. The movie premiered on Prime Video on November 28, 2024. Before its release, a grand red carpet event was hosted at IMAX Cinema, Lekki, a Nollywood tradition, complete with dazzling celebrity appearances, the cast's finest attire, and relentless flashes of paparazzi cameras. This vibrant display is characteristic of Nollywood, often overshadowing whether the film truly delivers on quality. Suspicion follows the harrowing journey of Volke, played by Stan Nze, a man endowed with ancient mystical powers by his mother as part of a family legacy. When his best friend and daughter are brutally murdered, Volke is thrust into a dangerous pursuit of vengeance. As he navigates the complexities of his supernatural abilities, he is confronted with heart-wrenching moral choices, deep betrayals, and the fragile bonds of love and friendship. This gripping tale of power, justice, and revenge explores how far one man is willing to go to find justice while battling the darkness within himself. To begin with, I must admit I hadn't heard much about this movie before watching it yesterday, and it only came to my attention thanks to a friend's recommendation. Before committing to it, I decided to check out the trailer. While the trailer didn't offer much in terms of story or intrigue, the impressive fight choreography caught my eye. That alone was enough to convince me to give the nearly 2-hour runtime a shot. Now let's explore whether the film justifies its hype or falls flat on its ambitious premise. The movie begins with an unsettling and confusing opening scene. Volke's mother, portrayed as her younger self, wakes up abruptly in the middle of the night, seemingly terrified of an unspecified danger. Without any explanation or context, she snatches her son, places him in a massive pot over a fire, and performs a ritual steeped in African mysticism and voodoo, purportedly to make him indestructible. The scene transitions to her shooting young Volke in the chest to test her ritual's success. As the bullet has no effect, her husband storms in, shouting, "What have you done?" Young Volke emerges unscathed, and the narrative fast forwards to the present with the characters now grown. This opening raises more questions than it answers and sets a shaky foundation for the story. Why did Volke's mother suddenly act out of fear? What was she afraid of? And why did she choose such an extreme method to protect her son? The movie provides no backstory to justify her actions or to explore how Volke's parents acquired their mystical powers. Initially, the father seems powerless, yet later he inexplicably displays telekinetic abilities akin to Marvel's Professor X. The lack of coherent backstory in this opening scene establishes a pattern of plot holes and unanswered questions that plague the rest of the film. From the very start, it's clear that the story struggles with structure and depth, forcing viewers to brace themselves for an underdeveloped and poorly explained narrative. After the opening scene, the movie introduces the romantic relationship between Volke and Chisom. However, this subplot is poorly executed, giving the audience no time to become invested in the characters' connection. The romance ends almost as abruptly as it begins, making it feel like an unnecessary filler that adds nothing meaningful to the story. It's clear that the writer and director thought they could shoehorn a love interest into the narrative for emotional weight. but the attempt is clumsy and uninspired. From the moment Chisom appears, it's painfully obvious that she will betray Volker. The predictability of this plot twist reeks of lazy writing, with no effort made to develop Chisom's character or provide a compelling backstory. The lack of depth makes her actions feel hollow and unconvincing. The most frustrating part of this subplot is how it devolves after Volker saves Chisom from the vengeful killer. Instead of any meaningful resolution, the narrative takes a ludicrous turn, with Chisom suddenly becoming Volker's enemy because he refuses to join her cause. Her eventual demise feels like an anticlimactic afterthought rather than a pivotal moment in the story. This poorly executed romance is emblematic of the film's broader issues: predictable storytelling, underdeveloped characters, and weak plotting. It drags the narrative down and leaves the audience frustrated by its lack of originality and depth. The central theme of this film revolves around the relationship between Volker, his best friend Rogba, and Rogba's daughter, yet the execution of this pivotal dynamic is painfully underwhelming. The narrative thrusts us directly into a chaotic kidnapping scene where unknown assailants in a bus attempt to abduct Rogba's daughter. While the scene introduces some much-needed tension, it also showcases the film's reliance on predictable and formulaic storytelling. To its credit, the fight choreography in this sequence stands out as one of the better attempts in Nollywood, offering brief moments of visual appeal. However, even these flashes of brilliance are marred by occasional missteps and the lack of true action hero charisma from the actors portraying Volker and Rogba. Their performances fail to elevate the scene beyond a superficial scuffle, leaving the audience detached from the stakes. The most glaring issue, however, lies in the forced melodrama surrounding Rogba's daughter. Before the abduction, the audience is conspicuously shown the child wearing a colorful scarf, an unnecessary prop blatantly inserted to serve as an emotional crutch later. The moment she predictably drops the scarf during the kidnapping, it becomes painfully clear that this was a lazy attempt by the writer and director to manufacture emotional weight. Rogba's eventual discovery of the scarf, coupled with the overplayed reaction, feels contrived and unearned, a cheap bid for sentimentality rather than an organic moment of despair. This scene epitomizes the film's broader flaws: a lack of originality, a dependence on overused tropes, and an inability to provide genuine emotional resonance. What could have been a powerful opening to solidify the film's stakes instead becomes an exercise in predictability and shallow dramatics. Following the kidnapping scene, the movie begins its steep decline, relying heavily on unoriginal ideas and blatantly copying scenes from Hollywood films. When Volker seeks help from his parents to locate Rogba's daughter, the resulting interaction feels clumsy, uninspired, and devoid of emotional weight. The dialogue between Volker and his mother is lackluster, with no real depth or urgency. The infamous scarf, a contrived prop introduced earlier, resurfaces here, handed to Volker's mother as she performs her mystic scrying to find the kidnapper's location. The reliance on this forced plot device underscores the laziness of the script. Adding to this, the film provides no meaningful backstory about Volker's mother's powers, leaving her abilities unexplained and making the scene feel hollow. Instead of enriching the story, it adds to the list of unexplored plot points that weigh down the narrative. The absurdity doesn't stop there. Rogba, desperate to find his daughter, calls Volker, asking about his mother's progress in locating her. But then, in an inexplicable twist, Rogba announces he's heading to the mountains. For what purpose? The script offers no rationale, making the decision baffling and utterly nonsensical. What follows is a blatant rip-off of Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Rogba is shot, falls from the mountain, and later reappears imbued with powers, seemingly inspired by Marvel's superhero transformation trope. This sequence lacks originality, feels shoehorned into the narrative, and insults the audience's intelligence. If you're going to borrow ideas from Hollywood, at least refine them and make them your own. What we get instead is a lazy, unpolished imitation that lacks coherence and creativity. The decision to send Rogba to the mountains is not just weak, it's outright absurd and emblematic of the poor writing that plagues this movie. Instead of crafting a compelling and cohesive storyline, the director relies on cheap imitations and poorly executed ideas, leaving the audience frustrated and disengaged. The introduction of a mysterious mystical knife initially seemed to inject a sense of intrigue and purpose into the story. Volker even went as far as sketching this weapon to show his mother, establishing its importance as a pivotal element in the plot. At first glance, this suggested a promising development that could elevate the narrative. However, what follows is a glaring example of the movie's failure in storytelling. This so-called significant knife becomes an utterly meaningless prop, abandoned without explanation or payoff. Its role in the story is reduced to nothing more than a forgotten afterthought, serving no purpose whatsoever. How can a movie invest so much emphasis on an object only to render it completely irrelevant? This is not just lazy writing, it's outright disrespectful to the audience's intelligence. By building anticipation around the knife and then discarding it, the writer and director undermine their own narrative and expose the lack of coherence and planning in their storytelling. This level of narrative neglect is nothing short of absurd. It exemplifies the sheer madness and ridiculousness that plague this film. If you're going to introduce an element of significance, it should serve a purpose. Otherwise, it's just another glaring misstep in a production riddled with poor decisions and wasted potential. Let's take a moment to examine the characters and their performances, starting with Stan Nze, who plays the lead role of Volker. Unfortunately, his portrayal leaves much to be desired. As the central figure in a movie that demands the commanding presence of an action hero, Stan Nze falls woefully short. His performance lacks the depth, charisma, and conviction needed to bring Volker to life. The action sequences, which should have been a highlight for his character, were unimpressive, flat-footed, and devoid of the energy that defines a true protagonist in an action-driven narrative. It felt as though he was merely going through the motions, unable to fully embody the raw intensity or emotional stakes required of his role. Moreover, the connection between his character and Chisom was practically invisible. Their relationship, which should have served as a critical, emotional thread in the story, felt hollow and poorly executed. There was no chemistry, no emotional resonance, just a glaring void where a meaningful connection should have been. Stan Nze's lackluster performance is emblematic of the larger issues within this film. A failure to invest in character development and a protagonist who simply does not command the screen. Omowumi Dada portrays Chisom, Volker's love interest, but her performance lacks any spark or depth. Much like Volker, there is absolutely no chemistry between her and her counterpart, leaving their interactions hollow and uninspiring. Her character feels insignificant, largely due to her underwhelming acting. Her dialogue is limited to one-liners, which mirrors the overall lackluster writing of the film, but does nothing to elevate her presence. Her screen time is sparse, appearing briefly at the beginning, reappearing mid-film, and again at the end, leaving no lasting impression. Her performance lacks vitality, failing to evoke any emotion or connection with the audience. Ultimately, her portrayal is disappointingly flat and lifeless. The absence of conviction in her delivery makes her presence almost invisible. Even her character's demise contributes nothing emotionally to the story. In a few words, her performance is anticlimactic, uninspired, and frustratingly dull, a glaring weak point in an already flawed film. The rest of the cast serves no purpose beyond filling up the screen and mechanically delivering their lines, adding nothing meaningful to the film. Richard Mofe-Damijo's minimal presence and performance barely make an impact, his inclusion feeling more like a desperate attempt to market the movie than a genuine contribution to its quality. While the film does have a few positives, the fight choreography stands out, and the CGI, though not groundbreaking, is a marked improvement from the usual substandard fare in Nollywood. These elements are overshadowed by the movie's glaring flaws. The film's downfall lies in its abysmal script, incoherent storytelling, flat one-liner dialogues, lack of character depth or backstories, and shockingly poor performances across the board. It's a chaotic, uninspired mess of a plot cobbled together without any sense of purpose or direction. The pacing is another disaster. By the 1 hour 25-minute mark, the movie feels like it should have ended, yet inexplicably, new characters and nonsensical subplots are introduced, compounding the confusion. Rogba's resurrection as a vengeful killer seeking justice is absurd, riddled with plot holes. He inexplicably remembers every person involved in his daughter's death, but somehow forgets his close friend Folke, a laughable and infuriating twist that underscores the script's incompetence. The writer and director clearly had no coherent vision for this story, resulting in a film that's a frustrating, disjointed exercise in wasted potential. In summary, Suspicion is yet another Nollywood film that squanders its potential, failing miserably on every conceivable front. The plot is a chaotic, incoherent mess riddled with confusion, and the storytelling is weak, offering no depth or substance to elevate the film. The lead actors deliver uninspired performances, while the supporting cast does nothing to breathe life into an already lifeless production. The writer and director seem utterly clueless, unable to provide competent direction or scripting to salvage the project. Even the title Suspicion is a disaster in itself, completely devoid of relevance or intrigue. There's absolutely nothing suspicious about the movie, making the title as hollow and forgettable as the film itself. It's a painfully weak name for an equally weak and disappointing movie. And now for my rating. Suspicion scores a disappointing 3 out of 10. I'm definitely trashing this. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon for notifications. Also, be sure to follow me on TikTok, WhatsApp channel, and Instagram at Domino's Cinephile for more movie and TV series reviews. Domino's Cinephile, signing out.